Let's talk about what a normie is. It's a word I use a lot, and normies don't use this word. So it separates a barrier between me and most of society. A normie is simply a person who upholds the norms of society. Every society will have normies by definition. That would be the majority who don't have a strong feeling that something is wrong with society, who go along and more or less agree with the norms of society, or their society. So you could imagine a society where I would be a normie, and indeed when I was born and grew up in the 1980s and somewhat in the 90s, then I was almost a normie, because society was very different than it is now, and it has changed. But for some reason I didn't change along with it. I didn't adopt this new sex hostility that society did in the 90s and 2000s, and then even more so right now. Until you have this absurd anti-sex bigotry that has consumed this civilization. The normies would at most call that the Me Too movement, which they would support, right? The pinnacle of feminism, the very last wave of this ever-increasing conviction that sexuality is the most horrible thing that you need to persecute as much as you possibly can. So that's what defines a normie. Somebody who hates sexuality, or who tolerates, condones norms of a society that hates sexuality as much as you can possibly imagine, because there's nothing worse to them. It's a fate worse than death. Sexuality is the very worst thing in the universe to them. So that's what I mean when I say normie. I mean somebody who goes along with that norm. So I'm not one of them, and I'm so disconnected from this society that I use that word normie a lot, because I just don't fit in. I'm not like them. I don't go along with this. I don't believe sex is bad. I am sex positive. So sex positive now is the opposite of normie. How do you deal with the fact that you shouldn't be here? You should be imprisoned for life. Because this society fundamentally cannot tolerate your sexuality because you are a man. How do you deal with that being immersed in hatred that hates your very soul? Everything you are is hated and wanted to be removed from society. Wanted to remove it. That's the attitude of normies to your sexuality, because you're an egocentric man. So you are a dead man walking. You are an obligate criminal. And whether they manage to remove you from society for life is merely a matter of resources, right? So how do you deal with that complete and constant hatred suffusing your soul from all directions from this society? How do you deal with that? That's the topic of this talk. So what you gotta do is to find a way to not let the hatred eat you up before it has to. I mean, before you're the victim of direct police violence. It's really all in your head. So it theoretically, it shouldn't have to destroy you, not before you're actually arrested, right? because that's the only violence that can actually hurt you. Of course, vigilantes can't too, but you can defend yourself against them legally, right? So you can kill them when they attack you and not be punished for that. So, think about how we can reduce that destructive power of the hatred that is generated by yourself from the knowledge of being immersed in this hateful civilization, right? And really, you are being too sensitive, too idealistic, too moral, and morally concerned, since you care about the injustice too much, which is a big part of how this hatred is destroying you, because it's not all because of consequences to yourself, because those would be much less if you weren't an activist, right? And the activism is brought on yourself. So all I'm saying is, try not to let the hate eat you up before the actual physical manifestation of that hate, the police violence, affects you, right? Yeah, that's really what the normies do, except they don't have the awareness, right? You can't unsee the things you've seen about the sex laws and how they attack men unjustly. But you can perhaps reduce the self-inflicted suffering. The normies deal with it with denial. I mean, they deny being sex offenders. They pretend that they're not sex offenders, right? They try to tell themselves that it's possible to not break the sex laws, which is a delusion. We're all sex offenders. Masculinity itself is criminalized through and through, right? It is impossible to not be a sex offender. We are obligate sex offenders because we are men. So that denial strategy that the normies use can only be used if you're naive. If you're really naive, you don't even know what the law says, right? Yeah, then you can apply that strategy, but I can't do that because I'm too aware. I'm a male sexualist, a long-standing men's rights activist. I know what's up. I know that we are obligate sex offenders just for existing as men, so I can't deny it, but I should try to not let the hatred eat me up. I want to talk about a flip side that is not publicly acknowledged, and that is the flip side to the anti-sex bigotry we have now. A flip side to their belief that sex is the worst thing in the universe that needs to be punished more than everything else. And that is that sex is also the best thing in the universe to men. So no matter how hard you criminalize it, it's never ever going to be enough to control our sexuality, because it's that important. There's just nothing you can do to control us, no matter how hard you criminalize it, no matter how harsh the penalties will be. Men will always act sexually. It doesn't help to have this extreme attitude that sex is the worst thing, the most crime-worthy thing in the universe, which is the current legal situation. because you don't realize that it's actually even more important to us, positively, as it is negative to feminists. So you can try to criminalize all you want, and you can criminalize all you want, and you do that, and that's accomplished already. But the joy of sex is still there, and it's stronger than all of this. You can't take that away from us. You can just kill us, but for obvious reasons, you can't just kill all men, because then you wouldn't have a society left. So you just end up criminalizing and criminalizing and criminalizing, but you never kill our spirit. We remain sex positive regardless of your criminalization. You cannot take that away from us.